Hello, I'm State Representative Andy Thompson from the 93rd House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Mike Ditto. We have with us today State Representative Andy Thompson, who serves the 93rd House District, which includes Guernsey, Monroe, and Noble counties, as well as portions of Washington and Muskingum counties. Thank you for joining us, Representative Thompson. Good to have you here.
Great to be with you, Mike.
So tell us a little bit about your background, your family. You're a small business owner. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Mike, I was born in Iowa, a small town, Pella. It's a Dutch community and a great small business community in Iowa. When I was 8 years old, we moved back to Ohio, which is my dad's home base. And so I was raised in Marietta. I went all through school there. And then when it was time to go to college, I went back to Iowa, went to Central College out there, and graduated with the degrees in Spanish and political science. From there, went to graduate school briefly, and then on to Washington, D.C. to take a job on Capitol Hill.
Excellent. Now, you own a small business, which some might argue is a little bit different than some of the other small business owners in the legislature. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we have a family business called Birdwatcher's Digest. It's a magazine about bird watching, and in the 70s, my mom got interested in bird watching. Then my brother and I would tag along with her birdwatching group, and we became interested. And so having the three of us interested, my dad took notice, and he had a background in journalism, so he decided maybe we could make a business out of this. And then it came to pass. We started it in 1978, and after many years of struggle, it got up and running, and it's been in business now more than 30 years. So it's still intact, still going on. My brother, my sister, my mom, and I work there, and so it continues to be a success story and something that I think has brought a lot of attention to Marietta and to Ohio.
Prior to being an elected member of the Ohio House, you served on Marietta City Council. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about your experience there.
Yes, I'd been kind of, after my experience in Washington, I spent about 4 years on Capitol Hill and came back to join the family business in 1990. I wanted to stay involved in politics in some way, and so I was involved with the National Federation of Independent Business as an Area Action Council chairman in Marietta. And that allowed me to stay involved and to get involved with other small business owners. And then in 2005, an opportunity presented itself to run for Marietta City Council. There's always a time in life where they look around the table and they say, it's your turn to do something.
Sure.
And so it was a pleasure for me to do it. I was elected to City Council. I was one Republican with 6 Democrats on that council. So I had to learn about how to work across the aisle and generate bipartisan momentum. And we were able to do some very important things, one of which was to put in a performance audit of the city functions. And I think that taught me a lot, which would later apply to my job here in Columbus, about fiscal responsibility and ensuring that the government delivers a good value for the taxpayer. And so served nearly 3 terms there, served as finance chair for 1 term, and so got a chance to see about employee relations, finance, parks and recreation, water and sewer. It was a great, I would say, liberal arts education about how government works, and again, has good applications for what we're doing here in Columbus.
So you're obviously busy in the community. You were a city councilman. You're a small business owner. What inspired you to run for state representative?
Well, one of the things I realized in city council is that we have very little control over certain things. It's really Ohio Revised Code, and what happens in Columbus really affects our ability to improve the economic climate. And so what I realized, and people were encouraging me, after I was on city council, I played a leadership role there. We'd taken the majority on city council in the subsequent election to my first one. And so people said, well, Andy, maybe you could play a leadership role in Columbus as well. So I had a couple opportunities where I was recruited, but I felt the timing was right last year. And with a good team of people coming here to Columbus as well, I felt like I could be part of that mix and contribute in a significant way.
So we've got 99 members of the Ohio House. Every single one of those districts are very diverse, very different, but they're, in a lot of ways, they're very similar.
Right.
A lot of folks talked about jobs and the economy as the #1 issue facing their individual House district. Is that true in your district? And if not, what would be the #1 issue?
Well, I think jobs are critical. I mean, people's well-being and their standard of living is very important to them. Sounds Southeastern Ohio is a poor part of the state. It's sometimes we feel like we're the forgotten part of the state, and I want to make sure that that's changed now. I think we have a great opportunity coming with oil and gas exploration and the spin-off businesses that will be associated with that. But what we wanted to do here in Columbus was first establish fiscal responsibility, because fiscal responsibility and a balanced budget really lays the groundwork for economic success. Businesses are going to look at the signals that we're sending to them and say, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing what you promised to do? And does the future look brighter for us? There's a lot of money sitting on the table. We hear about all the money that's not being invested right now. I think it will be invested if we take the right steps here in Columbus. And so balancing the budget was a logical first step. And next will be how can we make a tax structure and a regulatory structure that will improve it for their operations as well, so they see a good return on their investment. And if they see that positive return, then economic growth will ensue and jobs will be coming.
And you mentioned the regulatory structure. One of the first set of bills signed into law by Governor Kasich was actually a version of the bill that you sponsored, dealing with the CSI initiative. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. House Bill 94, which was also Senate Bill 2, was an initiative that Lieutenant Governor Mary Taylor was very much interested in, and the governor as well. And they gave us an opportunity to participate in shepherding that through the House. I was very enthusiastic about this because I believe, like I'm sure a lot of the folks in my district believe, that there are a lot of regulations that just don't make common sense. And so when we sit down to legislate, we should take very seriously the impact that that legislation will have on small business and ultimately on Ohio's economic success. And so House Bill 94 puts into play some procedures and a department which will look at and review these regulations as they come up for renewal every 5 years and as new ones are proposed. And so I think that with that common sense notion in mind, we have a good chance to make things better for businesses in Ohio. Often they ask questions of regulatory agencies and they can't get a straight answer. And so we really don't want to put them in a position where they're spending the majority of their time trying to comply with regulations when they should be spending their time investing and growing their business. And so Senate or House Bill 94, Senate Bill 2, which we passed and the governor signed, it was a pleasure for me to be involved. Representative Rogner and I did that in the House here, and so it was a blazing start to my legislative career, but it was a real pleasure to be involved in something that I knew was going to do good things for Ohio, and we had tremendous bipartisan support. So I knew that, again, we were doing the right thing, and that's what I came to Columbus to do.
Another bill that has passed is House Bill 2, dealing with performance audits, and you mentioned having some work in that area as a member of City Council. Right. What was the bill like, and what did it do here for the state?
Well, the idea is to take 4 different agencies of the state and to review their performance and see whether there are efficiencies to be gained, maybe some restructuring that can be done. Are they spending taxpayers' money wisely? I'd seen that at the city level. We had achieved some tremendous savings. In some cases it was consolidation. In some cases it was just reworking the way business was done or reorienting personnel. And I believe in the state, one of the things the governor mentioned as we went into the budget process was there was a lot of efficiencies that could be found. There was a lot of what we would call waste in government, and I think that this performance audit will put the structure in place for the first 3 or 4 departments that we're going to do. I think we're Department of Transportation. We're going to look at some of the healthcare area. I think there was the housing agency also we're going to look at. So there's some great opportunities for us to, again, deliver value for the taxpayers on the dollars that they are sending to Columbus, and to ensure that we don't waste any money in that process, and that ultimately we deliver the best thing we can for taxpayer dollars. And again, that was House Bill 2. That's why it was one of the first out of the box, because it had been pending in the previous administration and previous Ohio House. They had not taken action on that. We knew that there were savings that Mary Taylor had found through some of the audits that she had done, and so again, working with Mary Taylor and the governor and the legislature, there was tremendous support for doing this, and I was very proud to be part of that.
One of the core duties of a legislator during their 2-year session in the House is the state budget, and it's occupied everyone's time and the headlines over the last 6 months or so. We're nearing the end of the budget process here towards the end of June. Tell us a little bit about your view on the state budget and if there are any components that you are particularly proud of.
Well, one of the issues that I was most concerned with was the estate tax, what we refer to as the death tax. And the impact of the death tax is that it drives people out of Ohio. I think the speaker likes to tell the story about how Jeb Bush said to him at one point, don't ever repeal that death tax, Mr. Speaker, because it's the best thing for Florida. We don't want to be driving our citizens to Florida or some other state that's more tax friendly. We want to ensure that if they're responsible and they are successful, that they're able to pass their resources on to their families, because it's been taxed before. We don't need to tax this multiple times, and we don't need to punish them for their success. I want to see Ohio be a state where people stay, where we keep the brain power of these senior citizens, the productivity and the dollars that they have, and ultimately congressional representation is determined by the number of citizens that we have in Ohio. So that's very important, and we've had encouragement from the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, the Farm Bureau, and many other pro-business and pro-economic development groups that this is an important move, and so I was pleased to see that that is going to be retained in the budget process. Also, we wanted to, be fiscally responsible, look at every dollar that we're spending there and try to ensure that we're not, being I guess, too loose with the dollars that are being sent to us. Again, and every family around their kitchen table are making these difficult decisions, and I think that it's our responsibility to do so as well. So limiting the spending and then also picking priorities. I'm excited about the work that the governor is doing to try and reorient our healthcare system. They call it healthcare transformation. I believe that there are better ways for us to do it, better ways to deliver health care, to make it more cost effective. And that's a huge driver for our budget when you talk about Medicaid and what we have to do in terms of federal dollars. So I was very attentive to that, and at the same time sensitive that as we're pruning back government, that we not punish unduly those groups that have taken cuts in the recent past, to try and be fair to those various groups like the museums, mental health, and some of those other areas that I think have taken a hit in the past. So we try to be fair to them as we're going through the budget process. So those are some of the priorities that I had. And of course, economic development, but I think
Certainly.
that will come as we establish fiscal responsibility.
As a member of the House, you have a number of committees that you serve on. What committees do you serve on, and what types of initiatives are you working on in those committees?
Agricultural and natural resources is one of the key ones, and that has to do with all the farm families in my district,
Sure.
but also the oil and gas and other energy producers. Coal is very important in my district. So again, and so that's one committee. The second one is education. We're working on a lot of reform issues there, and I'm sure we'll talk about that briefly. And then economic development and small business. Again, being a small businessman, that's near and dear to my heart. So anything we can do to break the log jams, to provide opportunity, and to encourage small businesses to take that plunge in Ohio. And we want big business as well. In concert with small business, I believe that we can get ourselves back on track and start to provide that prosperity that Ohioans are looking for.
Your constituents are likely going to be watching this show and learning a little bit more about you and your record of service here in the House. Tell your constituents what a typical day is like in the Ohio House, if there is such a thing.
Okay. Well, there's a lot, as you know, there are a lot of folks who want to have their voices heard. And
Certainly.
so many mornings we will start out with some kind of breakfast that a group will provide in order for us to come and learn more about what they do and what their interests are. From there in the morning, we'll come into the office and we'll answer some constituent mail and questions. And then from there, we'll go into caucus with our Republican colleagues and we'll hear about legislation we're going to be dealing with on that day. From there, we'll proceed to the House floor and take care of the people's business and hopefully continue to make things better for Ohio. And then in the afternoon, often we will have some other meetings. We'll try to catch up on work, return phone calls, and then in the evening, once again, often there will be a reception from some group, whether it's the Ohio Chamber or National Federation of Independent Business, maybe the Farm Bureau, maybe some other group that has business before the State House. And so we try to. And again, in the evening, often there'll be 5 or 6 or 7 different receptions. So you try to get around to all these and make sure that you give everybody their slice of your time. And I'm thoroughly enjoying this process. It's a great honor to be serving here, and so I don't regret a minute of it. I think it's fantastic for us. It's a tremendous learning process, and hopefully we and I know that we are working hard to do the best job we can.
In the 6 months that you've been here, you've had a pretty busy schedule. And what have you enjoyed most? And have you had the opportunity to work with a lot of your constituents back home?
Yeah, I think with my constituents back home, I've learned a lot about economic development that I thought I knew a certain deal as a small businessman, but
Sure.
But I'm learning more as I hear about the individual stories about how people have started businesses, maybe some problems they've encountered in their business, and soliciting my help so that they can get through the regulatory web or tell their stories before a committee. I'm excited about the opportunities for southeastern Ohio. I really think that we're on the verge of some really great things economically there. And that will have a profound effect, because as economic success ensues, then government has the money with which to do what it needs to do for our citizens to deliver those services that we think are important. And also, as economic opportunity ensues, people have more freedom to make the decisions they would like. We'd like for our young people to be able to pursue opportunity in Ohio, and they can do that if they can find a job here in Ohio. We have an outstanding education system here. So really what we're trying to do, I mean, I think what our task is to provide opportunity to set the table for people so that they can have a chance in Ohio, and then try to keep government out of the way as much as possible.
Representative Thompson, we've got your contact information for your office at the bottom of the screen, so I'm sure your constituents will contact you. Thank you for joining us here on the program today. Again, you've been watching Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. We look forward to seeing you here next time.